we started. All right, cool. So I'm gonna start a screen share with you, and then you'll be able to see. I'll be able to just walk you through what the program is. Okay. All right. Do you see it? Working? Okay. All right. So this is like where this is just like a little mock-up of where our whole software is up to at the moment. It's not fully programmed, but it will be within the next week or so, call it. All right. So this is what we're trying to do. Remember, is improve people's performance by in the workplace by creating a feedback system, right? Which works between managers and employees and the other way around. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. And with this feedback, right, that occurs between the two parties, we're also going to have HR managers and executives look at the feedback and the quality of the feedback. And through that, they're going to be able to determine a couple things, right? They're going to be able to see for employees where their weaknesses are. Okay, so for instance, what this would mean is, Kathy, pretend you're my boss and I worked with you on a certain project. Okay, in this project, you asked me to do a couple things. So right here, I have financial modeling, right? Maybe I did some financial modeling for you, technically. Okay, so after that project, I'm gonna ask you to give me some feedback. Okay. So based on your feedback, you might say, "Oh, Alex has really, really good financial modeling skills," or let's say, for instance, I had really poor financial modeling skills on the project, and it hindered the project. So that's the kind of feedback that you give me, okay? So using that feedback, HR managers are going to be like, I can automatically see, based on people's feedback, so Alex isn't really strong in financial modeling at the moment. Let's give him a learning development course, which is going to help boost his financial modeling skills. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, and so then on the other perspective, the way it would work is saying, you obviously work on a technical basis with certain employees, but then you also work on a interpersonal level. Okay, so who am I as a person? How well do I communicate with you? Right? How do I work within the office? Right? That's another really important aspect. Okay, so and that's a what we call soft skills, is something which isn't being tracked very much within the workplace at the moment, and it's something which we think is really, really important. Okay, because how you work with other people is just as important as how you are within your actual role. And it flows on over to like working with clients and stuff as well. Okay, so the people outcomes is the second thing which we measure, right? So you see here how we have financial modeling as the first one. I can request feedback, and then I can get like a sad face or a happy face or a really, really in love face with the person. Okay, and the same goes for their soft skills. So right now we have like online communication and requesting feedback button there, and then how well they performed here and here, right?
So these outcomes, are they preset for the project, or do you, like, let's say as an employee, choose what outcomes you want to be have feedback for?
Yeah, perfect. Okay, good question. So this is essentially like your profile. Like you open your page, this is what comes up. All right, you can I don't have the buttons there, but you can just go in and you can add here financial, add like another skill, right? And they'll come up and be like, oh, I worked in this, please give me feedback on how I was in this role, right? And so what you really kind of start building out after a while is this resume, or on the job resume, something which people don't really get, an in-depth look in. Like you see resumes nowadays are like 2 lines. People might say, I worked at you work at HCF. I worked at HCF as a recruitment officer. Okay, and then and then you'll like list your 3 lines, but you don't have any like actual direct feedback on all of this. So that's why that's one of the things which we're trying to do. And you see at the bottom here, we'll get to it later, but that little certify button, that is essentially going to be a button which is going to print you out like similar to like what would be an academic transcript for university, but you would do it for your on-the-job training for work. So if you're trying to move between different jobs, you'll be able to essentially get a certificate for that as well.
This would be driven by the employee then.
Pardon?
To request it. It's driven by the employee to request it from their managers or whoever they worked with. It's not coming from the manager saying, I'm going to give you feedback on these areas.
Right. So it goes both ways. Okay. So as a employee, you're going to want to get as much feedback as possible from your manager, right? You're going to want them to say, because you want to build out your resume, build out your skills, show people everything you've done, right? So you're going to be constantly requesting feedback from your manager after every project.
But not everyone's like that. Like the more driven people like me and you and the people that we usually work around, they tend to want feedback because they're about self-improvement. But there's actually a lot of people in the workplace who are afraid of feedback because of what they're going to hear. Exactly,
which is a really, really good point you're bringing up. Okay, because where we're trying to structure this is like a two-way street. So it's not only right now I've just been focusing on the employees and how they want feedback, right? But the managers themselves are also going to want feedback, and
want to give feedback or want feedback.
We'll want feedback as well, right? But on everyone else in their team and how they're performing as a leader, right? Because they themselves want to step up into higher rungs of management within larger organizations. Okay. Look, if you have, I'll take a couple steps back and answer like your point properly. But if you have different employees who, one guy's really driven, one guy's not so driven, right? You're not gonna just intrinsically change whether one person is motivated in their role versus someone who's not, right? Like, but they're like, we believe it's split up. We might say like 30% of the people are just going to be complacent in their roles no matter what you really, really do. Okay, no matter what software you implement or whatnot. And then you have like a top 30% who are always going to be able to excel in every role. It doesn't matter what software you give them or bullshit like that, right? But then you have the middle part, that middle 40%. Those are the people who are like on the edge, right? Who, if you can give them enough encouragement, provide them with the right tools, they can excel. Okay, and that's really where we're trying to focus this. We're trying to build a two-way feedback system within organizations, because right now that's not really what happens, right? In organizations, you'll have like a mid-year review and an annual review, and that's only 2 times you get to say like, this is the kind of work that I've been doing. You only touch and brush over the large kind of projects that you do, but what we really want to create is like a constant feedback loop within organizations. People always know where they're positioned, right? You always know how they're doing, where their weaknesses are, where their strengths are, right? And how to work on them. And we want to make this in like a seamless way as possible. So that's pretty much what our job here is.
Does this fit into their performance management review, like the official one that determines whether or not they get that bonus at the end of the year? Does it count towards that? Because then it means like kind of the stakes of it are a lot higher.
Right. So what you're touching on is just incentivizing this, right? So we've like we're talking with Telstra at the moment. Just in terms of HR, they love this. They're looking to incentivize this through a number of ways. One of the key ones is like they're not looking at just monetary. They're looking at like staff paid holidays. Like trips overseas, fully paid accommodation, plane tickets, flights and stuff for their people who are keeping up with this project really, really well and keeping this feedback system working, right? And if you can show a lot of performance, look, this is all just like in the works and just like stuff we've verbally spewed out and like ideas we've thrown around, but that's kind of where we're heading towards with it. Like every organization is going to be different within how they implement the system and how they incentivize people to use it, right? But point is, there's going to be the driven people who are going to use it regardless. There's going to be the people who it might not work too well for, and there's going to be people who, once incentivized through whatever means possible, are going to really, really go for it. That's what we hope.
Okay.
All right, cool. So just moving on, right? So moving back to like where the manager, how it's going to work from the role of the managers, is that managers are going to have, like, because the employees are going to be constantly requesting feedback for their work, as we hope, the managers are going to be also the ones who are going to be employing and providing this feedback. We're going to have a couple, like, what we call smart data rules, essentially like algorithms, okay? Which are going to look at keywords and the reactions of the feedback from the managers in terms of the employees, right? So what we believe is that there's a strong correlation between how good someone is as a manager, right? How well they manage people, and the strength of and the reception of their feedback. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the better the feedback you give, we think you're generally more likely to become a better manager because of that, right?
Yeah.
And so we have algorithms to look at the frequency, so how often you use the system, right? How people are receiving all of the feedback that you're given, and then you're pretty much what you can then decipher, or what executives and HR managers are able to then decipher, is who you're going to promote to senior management, middle management, right? We had that conversation with the CEO of Qantas, Alan Joyce, and he essentially said, I don't know who I'm supposed to put up to middle management, okay? Because when you get up to middle and senior management, it's not about doing the job as much as it is about managing the people, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
I was going to say,
yep.
So echoey on my end.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so there's a big issue with, like, in my company, there's a lot of managers who hate providing feedback.
Yeah.
And what's happening is a lot of candidates are applying to roles internally. So they're trying to move from, let's say, like, the branch to the call center, or up to a team leader role. And they've applied so many times for these roles. And we keep saying to the manager, look, they're not successful because, they're missing these certain competencies, or these soft skills, they can't communicate properly, or they needed to be developed in this way. And the managers always say to us, the recruiters, oh, can't you give them that feedback? Like, they hate giving that feedback to their employees. And that's the big issue with it, is that, like, they just don't like confrontation. And so that really differentiates between the good managers who are able to develop their staff, and they're confident enough to say, look, you're doing well in these areas, but there's these things that we need to improve you on, versus the managers who are actually not really good managers at all. They just kind of like to give everyone this general positive feedback, and they hate that confrontation.
Exactly. That's an actually awesome point. And that gives me a lot of confidence. I'm glad you said that, right? Because the whole idea is that you're meant to be managing people, right? And it should be as easy as me going to you and saying, look, I'm really bad. I'm really, like, you didn't perform very well in this situation, right? I know you could have done better. This is how I think we should look at moving forward within the future, blah, 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 right? The best employees and the best managers are going to be the ones who are going to be receptive to constructive feedback and be able to provide good constructive feedback, and like, the whole idea that Alan Joyce was trying to say is that when he has, like, one guy who's really, really good at, he has two guys who wants to promote to senior management, right? He doesn't know them very well. Qantas is a massive company, right? But he's just doing guesswork, because right now all he's basing it off is just technical skills. So, how good are they at sales? One guy might be making, $1 million in sales each year, and the other guy might be making $890,000 in sales each year, right? How does he know who he should be promoting? Like, it's just guesswork. But if he had known now, one guy works really, really well with people. Everyone he's dealt with in the past, the employees who talk to him, right, and the managers who he has worked with, says, oh, this guy has like 5 out of 5 like stars, and the other guy is like 3.5 out of 5, right? there you have like tangible data which says this guy's really really good to work with people. In a managerial role he'll probably perform quite well as well, and regardless of this $110,000 difference in terms of like money that they bring in, right, we're going to look past that because of how well he works with people and how well he is as how well we think he is going to perform as a manager. So I guess therein lies like the main crux of what it is we're trying to do. The other thing is that the other way that our business works is that when you have these struggling employees to say, oh come on, like you're not doing the managers tell them, oh, you're not really strong in these key areas. It might be people skills, right? There's plenty of soft skills courses out there, or it might be technical skills, plenty of technical skill courses out there. We can take this data and we can say, oh, look, Qantas's employees having trouble here and here and here. It's a really big problem. Oh, it's a really big problem at Telstra as well. Okay, or it's a really big problem, over a different company. We can take this data and we can actually then go off and we do tell learning service providers, so guys who create these kinds of courses, specialists who create these kinds of courses, and we tell them, look, there's a really really big demand for good courses in this area, right? How about you try creating one which we then can like trial with some of these companies, right? And the other thing which we step in is because we're so focused on that area as well, we can afterwards you can actually gauge the improvement of an effectiveness of different courses on employees, right? So say for instance I have Bob and I have Jim, right? Bob does one course from a course provider on working with people, and Jim does a different course on working with people, and say that they were essentially on the same level playing field in terms of their feedback, right? And after that they did these courses, Jim had this absolutely massive improvement. He like got better as a person. Everyone started rating him 5 stars, right? And as opposed to Bob, who didn't really show much improvement at all. We can then say, oh, let's keep using Jim's courses and providing that to the new employees who have the same trouble in these fields, right? So then you provide more information to the HR professionals, because suddenly they're then able to say, look, we know which best courses are able to give to our employees, because currently we don't know. Currently there's just so many more coming out constantly on the market that we're kind of flooded with this, and we don't have a really good rating system how this is supposed to work. But right now, if we can implement something like this, we'll have a bit of data behind it. So that's pretty much the third part and where we look to stand. This feedback, I don't have it mocked up, but when you click the request feedback, like the green button, you'll be able then to see like a different page will come up, which will pretty much say like you can provide a couple quick lines on how they performed, and then there'll be a more in-depth one which allowed you to go more in-depth if you wanted to, if you will. This My Learning tab here would just say like, all the courses you have and all the projects which you have, and we're looking to also be is like a project management tool for different people. So and at the bottom you have the story and you have the certify. So certify is like, print an academic transcript, someone will sign that off, and a story it'd be like, we'll have like the actual feedback, or like top feedback given by different managers within different things, so then you can actually tell your own story on how you progress through this organization, which we think is pretty cool. And I really wanted, one thing I don't want to forget is, remember you told me that point about like someone trying to move between different divisions within an organization. So the way we want to promote that, because we think that's really important, right? Like I think the statistic is it costs $10,000 for every new hire that you take into an organization. $10,000 approximately, right? You're paying like recruiters, and you're paying like starting salaries, and you're taking a lot of time from people who are recruiting, right? $10,000. So obviously taking it within organizations, you can totally do that, right? Like it's cheaper to take it within a different division, right?
Yep.
What we think is that if people can truly understand the story, right, of what other people in different divisions are doing, then it's going to promote interdivisional mobility, right? So if I for instance am working as an analyst in investment banking, and that's not really where my true goal is, but my true goal is to work in the visual design group, right? I can look up different people within the organizations, right, and I can see what their story is, right? I can see how they got to their role.
That's public, that information?
Yeah, so that's what we're talking on right now.
I don't know about that.
Right.
I think, because I think the way you base this off, like I really like the idea of it, but it is based off kind of the ideal worker, like a person who is driven and wants to make career moves and stuff.
Yeah.
But you've got to also consider that there's a lot of people in the organization who might not be as motivated, or they don't like this sort of stuff public for other people to see, because it is quite confronting. And even if they are doing well, they don't want to show the feedback and the level of skills they have for everything. So I don't know about making it accessible for everyone to see.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't mean, I used the wrong words there. I don't mean story. I meant like the certificate. You can
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it makes more sense if you kind of show, so if you want to get to this role,
yeah,
these are the type of skills, these outcomes that you need to get to there, and
exactly.
then you can compare it with what you have.
Right.
That makes sense, but I wouldn't do it specific to a person. I'd do it specific to a job position or description.
Yeah, right. So that's exactly that's yeah. So what we were talking about is role templates. Different organizations are going to want different things, and there's going to be a lot of people with different opinions on all of that. And I do value what you just said. But yeah, role templates is a really important thing, because it's another problem that that organizations encounter, which is like when people leave, right? People often, like, no one's actually recording what these people are doing, right?
Yeah.
In their job, because people's jobs, evolve with time, right? People's responsibilities evolve with time. Sally might have, when she started, it might be a HR manager or like a recruitment officer, but then she started dabbling in this and dabbling in that, and then she just like constantly, was doing all these different jobs, right? So what you want at the end is that if this feedback system is in place, right, and she's kept up with the profile, then you're essentially left with a really, really good role template, right? Which is for when new people come in, you know exactly what it is she was doing, and you know exactly the skills she got to get there, right? So then you suddenly, recruiters and HR managers and executives, they have this information. They say, okay, for our new hire, we got to make sure she at the very least knows how to do these things, more or less. So that's also where we're headed.
Yeah, I get that, and I see the value for it. So obviously, for like HR, their team has access to every single employee's story. But as for what an employee can see of another person's, I don't think they should be able to see another employee's story, but just a general one for the actual position that they're in.
Okay. What would you say, like, if someone wants to see someone else's certificate, meaning that, like, you would be able to say they did financial modeling, they have good financial modeling skills, they had strong, like, on an individual basis, right? They did
that's something you can request to the other person, and they can allow it or not.
Okay.
Because this sort of thing, like feedback from a manager, it can be quite a sensitive topic, because even though you might think everybody in the team's doing really well, the manager might perceive them differently, or there may be other things that they're lacking. So kind of keeping in mind that some people do want to keep this confidential, and it's like on a similar level as like salaries. People don't want their salary being accessible to everyone.
Right.
So if like as recruiters, like we can disclose the grade that a person may be on, which gives them like an approximate salary band, but we can't say specifically to another person, this person's on 120k. Right. So then if you think about it in that same sort of way, if an employee wants to move, let's say, to like a call center team leader role, they can click on the story of just a general position description of a team leader for the call center and see what skills they need for it, and then they can compare that with what they have and where they need to be. But I don't think they should see the specific team leader, Sally's story, unless like they request it and Sally gives them permission to see it.
Right. Or they could even be given like a variance band or something like that. Which is like, this is what the average person in there has, and some people have a little bit less and some people have a little bit more, and that's a really good idea. Awesome. So like, can you kind of see how it all kind of ties together? Do you think this is something that your organization would potentially use?
It would, but then it's just like, it means it's another system to integrate into it.
I like that you said that. You know why? There's a reason why I like the fact that you said that. Is because like right now I'm showing you as a software, right? And that's a massive thing that Telstra said that. They're like, man, we don't need another LMS. We don't need another like people management system. Like, we don't really have one, but we don't want to give people another login that they have to learn to use and like blah 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 blah. So we were like,
can be integrated into our current one.
Exactly. So the way we're actually looking to integrate right now is through email, Slack. Is Slack used at HCF?
No.
Okay, so it's just another messaging system. So email, Skype for Business.
I've used Slack before though.
And those are the two main ones. What do you use at HCF? Is it just email and Skype? Or...
No, so it's one called, no, we don't actually use any of that. We use a system called Success Cloud.
Success Cloud, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll look that up because I haven't heard that before. But essentially what we're doing, and we're actually making a bit of way with this, is that through integration with each of these platforms, we'll be able to say, you'll be able to literally not have to go into our system to type and request feedback, right? But it will be an automatic response. So say, for instance, this project was just completed, right? You can send say your employee might just send an email to the employer, right? Or say the meeting just finished, or because of your Google Calendar or something like that. You just type like request feedback. You can type an email to an AI bot, right? Or to your employer and say, could you please provide me back with feedback, right? And it will have like a certain link into it, which will then we'll have a template which gets sent, and then it will then be recorded in a repository somewhere. And so all of this can kind of be accessed from like maybe a managerial standpoint, right? So maybe just give it to HR or something like that if need be, right? Because you need some form of software or platform there, right? But not for the actual employees and the managers and everything else. We can have that just integrated very, very easily, in the sense that you can just type your message in email, send it off, and you're done, right?
Okay.
But at the same time, if you want to then go in and have certificates and everything like that, then you can have that system. But it's not something which you have to have open all the time, constantly reverting back to. We want to pretty much reduce all the barriers to entry as much as possible, so that this whole system becomes seamless. So that's our whole goal.
So I know you mentioned a lot of this is after a project they can request feedback and such. what about for the employees that don't really work on projects at all? So let's say our frontline staff and our call center staff,
Yeah.
they're just doing like their business as usual and they're just taking calls. They're hardly involved in projects. So when do they ask for feedback?
So that's where it comes in. Like, we'll have just some reminders set up, so weekly reminders. We want this to become more or less a weekly thing, right? The feedback isn't hard.
Weekly, like I get the point of trying to get regular feedback, but weekly, if you think about it for a manager, sometimes they have like 20, 30 people in their team even.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of feedback to give, and when you do something too often, it becomes less meaningful as well.
Right. Okay. Weekly is it's an arbitrary number, but it's pretty much what we came up with for people who are working. It's going to be different for every role. Okay. Like, I can understand that for different managers who are working with more people, they're not going to get feedback as more regularly. But our point is we want it to be more than what's currently in the workplace. Okay. So we want it more than biannual. And we really want to create a big feedback culture within an organization. So, like, personally, I don't think weekly is a big task when you're only spending like a couple minutes on each person. But
so what you want to balance though is something that's like regular feedback and actually good quality feedback, because if they're doing something weekly and just because it's so regular, they might fall into the habit of giving more generic feedback, and how is that even helpful? So then you're not achieving the aims of what your product wants to do.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So, like, that's not something that you can just automatically control, and we're not forcing managers to. We can't force managers to do anything here. Like, you can't say, like, you know.
So you can say that they can set if they want, let's say, fortnightly or monthly reminders, something.
Yeah. This is no like automatic thing. I'm like, it's an arbitrary number, right? And you can set reminders whenever you want. It's just that what we came up with, we were like, and I know in more the roles that I've worked in, had I been given weekly feedback, I definitely would have improved a lot more in my job. I can definitely say that. Like, my best performances were always after reviews on and that was every like 6 month period. So if I had known, I'd just...
Yeah, but that's because the 6 month one, it means a lot because it only happened 6 months. But do you get what I mean by the more frequently you do something, the more...
Yeah. No. 100%. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is it lies somewhere in between that band, most likely. Okay, it lies somewhere. The sweet spot lies somewhere between 1 week and 6 months. Okay, it could be monthly, it could be bi-weekly, or whatever it may be, right? And it's going to be dependent on the type of role you're working in and the number of employees you have under your band. You know, if you're in a team of 3, then, you know, feedback's not going to be as important, because like you are going to know very, very closely where everyone is, right? And you might only need to have a review every couple months for this to work, right? Point being that you know, if you had a lot more employees, the time difference is going to change. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll write that one down. 1 week, 6 months. Point is, we want people to give feedback, and we want to spur on a good like a safe culture. We want to create good culture within organizations, and the fundamental thing to good culture is psychological safety, meaning and that's actually the crux of the pyramid, as you think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? When he has like shelter and shit at the bottom. At the bottom of good culture within organizations, and this is a study done out of Google, was psychological safety runs at the bottom of that pyramid. It holds everything up, right? So if you don't have psychological safety, it doesn't matter if you have contribution, all those other things which go on the triangle. I have an ebook if you want to read this, but which we actually wrote. But But on the bottom you have psychological safety, and so that's the ability for me to, as a manager, to go and say, look, I think you're doing a really good job, but these are the areas which I think you could improve on. And it's also for you to say to your manager, look, how you handle that situation out there, I don't really agree with it. I can see why you did it, but how about you consider doing this next time? Okay, that's the kind of thing you want to spell within cultures and within organizations, because what we're finding is that, like, you know, people are dissatisfied with their jobs because they feel as though they're not being treated really as human beings, and they're just treating as numbers. So once you can kind of create that with an organization, you can turn it all around. Okay, I think well, that definitely went longer than expected. Do you have any other questions?
No, not for now, but if I do think of anything,
Okay.
I'll let it sit with me for a bit. Yeah. And then I'll let you know.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Kathy. Well,
Bye.
I'll follow you up on it, and I'll send you a couple of things, and have a read of it. And if you think your managers or anyone like that would be interested in knowing a little bit more about this, once we're not launched yet, right? So once we are launched, I'll happily reach out if you think this is something which could interest them.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex.
All right. See ya. Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Stop. Huh? Oh my god, it didn't save. What? Oh. Play. No. Oh, I had to press record. Fuck. Wait, no, still it doesn't work. Fucking VLC.